welcome everybody for joining into this webinar on digitalization solutions from IPCOS. And the topic of today is deploy performance management solutions at scale. Small agenda. First, I'm going to give you a very short introduction to IPCOS. I'm going to introduce also the speaker of today, who is Moran. And then I will give the floor to Moran for her presentation on the topic of today. And then at the end, we have questions and answers. Let me introduce the speaker of today, which is Moran Gijbels. She has a master degree of engineering in mathematical engineering, important in the digitalization sphere, but she's an engineer, and she graduated from the University of Leuven. She joined IPCOS in 2019, and she is a digital asset consultant, so boots on the ground. She has been doing a lot of projects in the past, and by doing that, she became team lead in the performance management group of IPCOS. Now, before I hand over the floor to Moran, I would like to indicate that in case you have any questions, please raise the questions via the chat box. There is a to the right of the Teams event system, you will find a chat box where you can ask your questions via chat functionality. I will collect all the questions, and after the presentation of Moran, we will go together through all your questions and she will answer them. And depending on how much time we have, we will answer all of them, or we will answer a subset of the questions, and then later on we can still answer the remaining part via email to you, so that everybody gets answers to his or her question. Voilà, that's about it from my side. So Moran, the floor is yours.
Thank you. All right. So, welcome everyone to this webinar. So we will discuss how to deploy performance management solutions at scale. And so more specifically, how we will use digital technologies for these performance management solutions. I joined IPCOS in 2019, which means that I've spent almost half of the time in COVID situation. So I think that was a stress on all of us. Maybe it seems already a bit far away, COVID, but only last year we were still not allowed to travel freely to where we wanted. And so the importance of digital solutions for performance management became very apparent. Also these days with energy prices rising, it stays very important to see how we can keep on improving to be able to digitalize further, to have our data available right away, to be able to make fast decisions on faster changing markets even. And today I would like to share with you, based on my own experience, I've been working with IPCOS actually from the start in the specialty chemical sector. And I would like to share with you, based on my own experience, some common things I've seen on why typical projects in performance management and in the digital space don't pass from the pilot stage into the development, into a deployment phase. And here I write, why do more than 50% of the project not pass? I think in reality, it's probably a bit more than 50%. And it's a bit of a pity. There is nothing wrong with failing. Like the saying goes, we learn more from our failures rather than from successes. But we would want to fail fast so we can draw faster conclusions and we don't spend all the time and resources, unnecessary time and resources on this. So, you know, when you want to start with a pilot, you usually start with your business case definition. So already here, sometimes even IPCOS gets questions to help identify the business cases or the requirements, or to organize workshop with different sites or different key members on site to see what should be the priorities for this year or next year to work on. Once you have all the use cases and you assign them different priorities, you have to find a budget to do this, you have to align different stakeholders. So there's already a big effort in this first step. And then even before we move on to the pilots, we usually have to do a technology selection. So now you have your use case, which technology is suited to fulfill our needs. And also this is often a very tricky question. Also, for example, IPCOS has worked on studies on regarding dashboarding solutions, what would be the best tool to use now that, for example, PyProcess book is going to become obsolete, what would be a good replacement. So we help with this technology selection, but it's often already as well a very heavy process where we have tenders or we organize little demos, and then we have to then we have to select which technology we will use, and also the technology is giving this time, and this digital space are fast evolving, so it's very difficult to keep a good eye on the market. So also there we often help, and then we go into the pilot identification. So we have to define on which site will we implement this pilot, in which site we will be testing our solution, which is also not always straightforward. You don't want to go for your site that is the most digital mature, because it's not a good representation of what you have in the other sites. And you also don't want to go for a site that has zero digital maturity, because you will run into many issues there before you can even start up your performance management solution. So what is the correct site? There has been a lot of thought put into that. And only after all these steps, we can finally move on into our pilot implementation. And then even this pilot implementation afterwards often doesn't succeed or doesn't lead to a deployment phase. And so the presentation of today, I would like to focus on some common pitfalls I have noticed from my own projects that I think could really help identifying these losses faster, or that would help to really build such a project that it has a higher chance on succeeding. So first one would be that there is no clear global strategy defined. Well, when something is not clear, it's always very difficult, because you can try different things, but you're never sure if they fully fit into your strategy. So that is one issue I have encountered. Sometimes it's also difficult proving value of certain things. Think, for example, out of data contextualization, it doesn't. Some projects don't have a clear return on investment, but are still in the digital space very important. Yet somehow everyone prefers to get a clear business case that shows some return on investment. Another issue that I've seen often is standardization versus customization, and where does this balance lay? So standardization, of course, is a corporate something a corporate would want, because you can go fast, but a plant usually wants something that really is tailored to them and fits their needs. So where do you find the right balance? Another thing that can make a project fail very fast is poor local adoption. If you cannot convince your site users that this is an important project and this will really help them, your pilot will never take off. So also in this, is very important when you choose your pilot site, that you choose a site that really wants, that has an open mind to change. And then as a last point I would like to discuss is not having the right team or the right people around the table to work on this project and make this project succeed. All right. So first point, no clear global strategy is defined. So digitalization is something that is often, I think it's the new buzz. It's a typical buzzword these past years, given COVID, and even now everyone needs to digitalize, and you can read digitalization everywhere. Also, for example, for us, when COVID hit, we are having now our digital webinars, where before we would used to go to conferences. So everyone is trying to get this digital fitted in their strategy and making changes. And it's very difficult because it's often defined on a corporate level, but it needs to solve problems on a site level. And so there are often many stakeholders that need to be aligned, which is not always easy to do. And also a digital project should span over all different work groups in a company. And it should not be interpreted by every group as a different topic. It cannot be that IT has their own digital projects they are working on without involving, for example, operational excellence. With digitalization, you're trying to really have all the workflows involved and having all the processes available, and you really want to work on these inter work group processes and data that needs to be shared. So we have to work a lot more together than before. And so it's very necessary that this strategy is clear, and we need to solve some of these things upfront. So what can we do to have a clear global strategy is, for me, divided in these 3 bullet points. So I would first of all say that we need to spend time on clearly identifying our use cases. Are my objectives clear? This is very important. Are the success criteria well defined? You don't want to start a project and then later on realize that there were actually success. We didn't know how to measure it. So maybe the project went well, but since we cannot really say what the success was, it's kind of getting forgotten. And then who are the stakeholders for each use case? So it's very important to identify all the stakeholders from upfront and get their buy-in in order to be able to advance well with this project. And so these stakeholders will come from different departments. So it's very important that they are all aligned from the start on what we want to achieve with this project. Then a second bucket is the data management, maybe even wouldn't say the most important in digital, but the most prominent. Digitalization in the end goes around data. So when we do a project, it's very important to know how the data will be collected, where will the data be stored, are there certain governance principles in place for this data. This whole data management topic is very important these days. For example, some weeks ago, we got a demand from a customer regarding management solution for their operating envelopes. And so we started working on this offer, and we were wondering, like, okay, how should we handle all these data? Where should we put all these limits? Who will be responsible for all these? And so basically, if there was already a certain data management principle in place in this company that we should base our offer on. And in the end, it turned out that that was not really in place yet. And so we are a bit seeing now, like, what can we put in place in order that we don't do this project just full custom development and then in 1 year later on decide like, but now our data management program has changed. We finally made up our minds about what it will be. Now you have to change your whole solution. So sometimes it's very important that these things are clear in order for other projects to succeed. And then lastly, also IT infrastructure. We see a lot more of a centralized IT infrastructure. We will move from thick clients to thin clients. More often, we want to be able to just log in on our website or look through the web, type in the website and arrive in our application, rather than a tool that is installed locally on your laptop, which makes it very difficult to do sharing. So who is governing this infrastructure? And one other important thing often is also which role does cloud play? Do we already made up our minds about the good strategy regarding cloud, for example? Because this might influence your architecture or the technologies to use in your performance management solutions. So all of these points are relevant and should be clear before we can start off. And maybe even a fourth point that I didn't mention here on the slide, but that is also very important, is how close are you to your site? Because digital comes from a corporate, and we all have ideas that we understand what is going on a site, but every site is very different. So we never have the full picture of what is happening on a site and what is not. So our business use case, is it really solving something for a site, and how does the IT infrastructure look on this site, and will it be able to handle this performance management solution that we want to install? So to conclude in that first point, I think it's very important to clarify, to have a clear vision on certain of these key questions before you can launch such a digital solution. So the next point I would like to discuss that I often always see is sometimes difficulty of proving the value of a project. So there are a couple of things, which is the first one is that your basic building blocks should be in place. During COVID, I had many meetings with many sites, and often they were mainly complaining about the internet that was not working well on a site, which for many people is of these days more of a commodity. So we just expect that when I have my phone and I want to Google a video of, I don't know, whichever, or I want a video call with my mom, I can just pick up my phone and that will work. But somehow on these sites, often that is not the case. Of course, there's a lot that comes with this, like data security on site. The network needs to be a lot more secure than personally. But these are basic building blocks for digitalization that need to be in place. So often we struggle with finding a clear value for this digitalization project. So if you are gonna go increase your throughput, you could say like, okay, I will do this project and I expect an increase of 1%, which has a clear impact. So it's a tangible result. But if I come and say, let's do this super cool digital twin project, and they will ask me, okay, but what will I save money with this? What will be the impact of this? Sometimes it's just difficult to tell, because a digital twin can be very useful for later applications to further build on, but someone has to start with doing this digital twin, and of this, the impact is not very clear. The same goes with data contextualization. Often when we start the project on site and we are asking for certain data points where we can find them, the people don't know where they are. They need to look, of course, in their data source. And it takes time to just get the relevant data or the data that is relevant to them from them, because maybe their data is not well structured, the name nomenclature is not clear. But these are all important aspects to a digital project. But to come and say, okay, we'll have a look at this, we'll do a cleansing of your data, or we put contextualization in place so you have a better architecture, a better structure, it's very difficult to then tell the people who have the budget, like, you need to do this because it will bring you this of value. Now, data contextualization is very useful to build further other use cases from, and it will save you time in other projects, but it doesn't have a tangible result itself. So what can you do about this? One way of seeing this or helping this is to work in different streams or waves. So what we sometimes see is that we will define some short-term achievements, and we'll look at the long-term achievements. And we try to combine tangible value with structural improvements we will need in this digitalization era. So for example, what do I mean? I can install a digital logbook where I enable the operators to digitally track events that occur on site, to log tasks, to do handovers. So to basically digitalize this communication between the operators and also between the different shifts, and that they move from a lot of people or clients still use handwritten notes. So it has a clear time saving cost. It's also better structured. It's easier to search your data afterwards. So we can really see the benefit of this. But on top of this, I could link to this Stream 1 project is maybe we can do some infrastructure improvement. Like I said, if your Wi-Fi is not working, but you're trying to implement this digital logbook, no one likes to sit in front of a screen waiting 1 minute before you can click on the next button. So it's very important that that is handled. And by linking it to a project with a tangible result, or linking it to something with a tangible result, maybe it's easier to get the budget for this. And then we can move on to Stream 2. So now we have our infrastructure improvement. Maybe a next step can be to have some more data contextualization in place that we can use to then afterwards track certain KPIs like the OEE that is mentioned here, the overall equipment effectiveness. So we can more easily find our data and use it to set up such a project to track if our equipment is running or not running, and see what our bad actors are, to see what is actually blocking the equipment from running, and to do then some further analysis on this. For example, then a third stream could be we want to have automatic reporting, and we're going to start creating some reporting templates. And by defining your performance management digital roadmap, in this way, you always have some return on value after the first stream, after the second stream. And by doing that, you easily can maintain also the value of your projects. And then, of course, afterwards, you go into a sustain phase where you need to keep offering trainings or evergreening. But so by really organizing your project in just these ways of having Stream 1, Stream 2, it helps to keep your stakeholders involved and happy with the project, because they will see immediate results, and that is sometimes what is important. A third point I would like to discuss then is the standardization versus customization. So I think it's a well-known issue. So a corporate, which is in the end defining, like we already said, our digital initiative, of course, would like to standardize as much as possible because it's fast and more efficient. We can do more copy-paste. So since it's faster, we need less resources, and the cost is probably lower. While a site, of course, wants a solution that answers their needs. So they want more time, probably specific development, but it will help with local adoption, but it will, of course, take a lot longer, take more resources, so it will become more and more expensive. Plus, it might become very difficult to maintain because maybe corporate is not aware of the solution. So also maintenance then plays there. And so these, where should this scale exactly be, is often a very difficult question. And unfortunately, there is not one fit all. There are always, there is not one answer to this, or one right answer to this question, but it really depends on project to project. But I think what we can say is that there's always a high variability between different sites and processes. Even if you would have the same process on the same site, it might be in a different country. So maybe weather is not the same. Also, culturally, people might have different habits. And an easy customization you could already do is, for example, not offering your solution only in one language, only English. Maybe it would be good to have the possibility to have it in the different languages of the different site. But there is already high variability. Also, when you buy new assets or new sites, they will always come with their own IT infrastructure, data source, databases. So some might have OZPy, others have Aspen. So there is not one site even that is similar, that is equal to another site. They might be similar, but there will always be differences. So what we have to do is realize the scale benefits, but still having the local requirements. And I believe one of the key things is that we can try to, for example, standardize a technology or a tool. So for example, with one client, we're working on building a standardized daily report. And so we have this one tool that we will implement on all the different sites. But the tool allows for using another language. The tool allows for the people to create their own daily report and maybe also have a certain template that their business unit manager would like to see available in this tool. But we can have this tool over all the different sites, but leave the sites with a certain flexibility of how they want to address this. Maybe they need some other information for their morning ritual. And if they have a bit of flexibility in using this tool, they will be a lot faster to adopt this tool. While if we are going to try to change, let's say, these processes, which in this we are definitely not, but we would want to have everyone to have the same morning meeting, then it is not really, it becomes a lot more of a heavy project because you have to include all the change management. So therefore, I think the importance is always to have try to standardize your tool, try to build the corporate knowledge regarding a tool, but leave the site with certain flexibility that they can use and show them also how they can use this tool and that it will fit their specific requirements. Okay, so if we then move to the fourth point, which is for local adoption, this can also be a problem if you go on sites. You know, sometimes a lot of clients have their certain favorite sites to do pilot implementations at, and sometimes the site is already like, I don't really care anymore, which is, I think, the most dangerous site, because they just let you do your thing, but they never really engage, neither objects towards what you're doing, so you don't get their feedback and you end up with something usually that that doesn't fit them. So you really want to have to include the site in this process, so you also don't end up with a solution that only fits. Let's say if you come up with a standard solution for everyone, it will fit no one's needs, which is never ideal. So we want to include the users into the story and make sure that they help with accepting the solution on site. So how do we do that is by including them into the different phases or into the different phases of a typical project. So we can involve them already in the diagnostic phase. So we want to involve all stakeholders. We want to know really well what the needs are by having interviews on site. Ideally, you would go on site and do some requirements gathering or see what are the protocols they're using now, will your solution fit in? And you might want to identify already one person that could be like your local champion. It really helps to have a local champion. I was doing this project where we were wondering why on one side we were so successful and the solution got so well adopted and they're using it on a daily basis, while in another side it's very difficult. We keep on having issues, it's not moving, but it's the same product. So we were really taking a step back and looking at it and wondering, why did it work so well for this site and why are we seeing so many issues with the other site? And we soon realized that it was because on one of the sites, on the site where it succeeded very well, we had one person who really believed in this digital solution and who was promoting it inside the company and still does, which made that everyone was very fast on board and willing to try. While if you don't, in the other side, it was not that the people were very hesitant or resistant towards the solution, but neither did we really have someone who was like really convinced, like, yeah, this is the solution that we need. This will fix these issues for us. So it's very important to, if you can identify maybe already someone who can be your local champion and who will drive the change in the factory to get the tool accepted. And then also when we move on to the model design, it's very important to stay in contact, constant contact with the user, do adjustments based on their feedback, make sure that it's a user interface that works for them, and also manage the expectations. I think that's also often very important. For example, what I also often notice is sometimes when people ask for a change and then, okay, we start making the change. And if you don't involve them and then you show them, okay, I listened to your needs and I did this and I think it answers everything. And you say, you see, it does this and it does that. But then the user comes like, no, this is not what I wanted. This is not what I asked for. And they are always a bit, they are way more open to suggestions when you really involve them. And it's not an issue if you can tell them even like, you know, I know this is important, but for now we cannot offer this, but maybe we can do it like this. If you involve them, they are way more open to also make certain adjustments in their own processes. And then in the implementation, it also stays important to start maybe providing trainings. In a lot of factories, it's shift-based. So before you have trained everyone, you spend already a large amount of time. So start on time with trainings. Trainings may also help them understand what the value will be of your solution. Do some last minute changes when required. Go to the site to implement it, to show them. I think it's very important, especially after this COVID era where a lot of people kind of moved into the more digital online meetings. It still remains very important to go on site, to have a coffee talk with maybe your process engineer to really hear what are the real issues here, because sometimes you don't just see everything just over a meeting. So where you can do the implementation on site, it will drive adoption of the tool way faster. And then after, it stays important that you focus on, of course, strengthening the value once you have implemented the solution. So you should offer a good support infrastructure. There's nothing so annoying that when something doesn't work and they write a ticket probably in the ticketing system and they only get an answer 1 week later. By then they might have already switched to their old solution, which is not what we want. So it's very important to have a highly reactive support, to also be proactive with support, also tell them, try to create a real user community, tell them when there are new nice features that might be good for them, and offer also some refresher trainings, because people leave the company, new people join, there will always be some loss of information when that happens. So it's important to keep also offering these trainings and to make sure that everyone is on board with this solution. So how does that look? So what do you get from actually making sure that the people adapt your tool very well? So you will get a higher value over time when you involve your stakeholders and the people on site who will actually use this tool already from the start. In the diagnostic phase, you will have the opportunity to better understand their use case, so you can make a tool that fits them even better. And then by involving them and working together with them, you will get a better adoption on the tool on site, which is in the end, I mean, I think everyone creates tools in the hope that they give value to the people who are using them. I don't think anyone starts with creating a tool and thinking, I'm gonna make the life of this process engineer now a lot harder because I think he doesn't work hard enough. That never happens. So by really involving them, making sure they're comfortable with the solution, they will also get more out of the solution. Like they will come up with new ideas, which is very, very good. And then how can we sustain this value over time afterwards is by offering trainings, keep on training, keep on investing in the system, show them that this system is worth having and that you also believe in this and you keep on investing, having new features, updates, make sure that there is support available for them by corporate, but also training. So it's not only one individual who holds all the knowledge. And then as my last point, I would like to discuss about not having the right team. So as I already mentioned, from the start a digital project, whether it's for performance management solution or something else, but here we're specifying on the performance management solution, it will always involve different departments. The digital project is one that spans over different departments. So we have an IT who might look at the security of the data, while the production engineer is more looking into the use case of this data. My control room operator might be looking more out of usability of this tool, which is very important. The data scientist might be looking into what he can use this data for, if there are any cool algorithms he can use. But all these people look from a certain angle at this problem, but none of them look from the same angle. And so often what I see is what misses is this type of role, which is called a digital engineer. And I think that is a very crucial role, and a role that IPCOS often plays in the projects. Like Christian already mentioned, we are all coming with usually engineering backgrounds. So we have a lot of domain knowledge and expertise that we combine with our technologies, and we do technology scouting. So we really try to form this bridge between all these different stakeholders that are very interested in the project. And we try to form the bridge between them and align all of them on what the actual solutions should be. And I think later on in time, these roles will also a bit change. Like now we are forming this bridge, but I think with these digitalization initiatives, people will start moving more and more into this type of combined roles. As you can see, for example, already, I think a chemical engineer these days doesn't graduate just as a chemical engineer. He comes with a background probably in data science, very specific to the chemical industry, with some IT knowledge of tools he could use. So he comes with all the chemical knowledge he learned, but also with already some certain other skills that are now still defined in other departments. So it's very important to have someone who can align all these people together to make your project succeed. All right, so to conclude, let's go over the 5 points that I mentioned. It's important to have a clear global strategy that is supported by everyone, meaning to indicate very fast if a project actually fits in the strategy, and to get a buy-in from all the stakeholders, because a digital project spans over all different departments. So everyone should be should be enthusiastic about this project and should be willing to support this. We want to try to combine projects with tangible value with structural improvements. So I think everyone can see why data contextualization is useful, maybe some more than others, but sometimes it's just difficult to get budget for it because there's not a clear return of investment. Try to think of it as in waves, where you define different projects where there are some that have this tangible value and have this structural improvement with it. Then realize benefits, realize scale benefits while honor local requirements. We don't want to end up with a solution that we think fits for 80%, is maybe 80% the right solution for all the sites. We want to have something that people are happy with. This will also drive into the next point, drive the local adoption, but to even further increase the local adoption, also include all the people on site and the people who will be using the tool from an early enough stage in your project to make sure that your tool will be adopted, and make sure to identify this local champion that is really enthusiastic about your project and will make sure that the people on site will keep using it. And then as last point, try to find the person that can bridge these interdisciplinary stakeholders that come from digital projects. Try to find someone who can look from an IT point of view, but also understands the use cases of our process engineer and the needs of the control room operator. And that was it.
Okay. Many thanks, Maran, for this insightful presentation and sharing all your experiences with customers in this webinar. In the meantime, we have received a couple of questions. We will treat them on a first in, first out basis. Given the time, it's 5:45. Let's limit it perhaps to about 3 questions that I have here on my list that we have received. So let's start with the first one. But nevertheless, for the attendees, you can still send us your questions. If we were not going to treat them now, then we're going to reply to you via email. Yeah. So, but let's start with the first question here. One question that comes to my mind is, if I, as a project manager, know all these pitfalls, and if I handle the project correctly, would that be a guarantee for success? Or are there also factors out of our control?
I think there are many factors out of our control, and there are also many more factors than the 5 that I mentioned here. For example, I did once a project where I think we were very successful, but it never reached the deployment phase because there were some budgeting issues. So it had nothing to do with the motivation of the people on site or the motivation or the success of the project or the project not answering the needs. It was just that people couldn't align on the cost for licenses, for example. So I think there are many more, and even if you know as a project manager all these pitfalls, you will still have projects that fail, because if you never try, you don't learn. I think it's not bad to fail, but if you can identify already some of these, like these pitfalls, or you're noticing like I want to do this project, but maybe my data management strategy is not very clear, like I mentioned in one of the examples, maybe to take a step back and start with looking into this data management strategy issue first.
Okay. You already mentioned the sooner you fail, the better. Well, the fact is, if you have to fail, then better sooner than later. And also, therefore, there's a question related to that came in. Do you think that an agile way of working would help you to reveal these pitfalls sooner?
I think in some cases, yes. I think it will drive adoption way more. Like I said, implementation, you should involve also the users on site. You should also involve the users on site. So using an agile approach where you start working, ask for feedback, keep on going, will help. Also, when you are trying to define maybe your roadmap for digitalization, there is no worry in changing your long-term goals, because you see that maybe you want to be too ambitious in your short-term goals. So I think an agile approach could definitely help some of these issues. But again, if it's a budgeting issue, then you cannot do very much. Or if it's above your head, like the digital strategy, and it's not in your hands, then you can work agile, but not all of the things are in your hands in that case.
Yeah. And then perhaps a last question. It's already 5:50 here. You mainly talk about projects that fail in the proof of concept phase. Yeah. Can you also shed some light on pitfalls during the scale-up phase, so then the phase after the proof of concept?
Yeah, one of the things could be, for example, if you don't choose your pilot site correctly, that you get the distorted image, and then you start in your scale-up phase, and you in the end do realize that this solution might not be working. There might be still your roadmap that needs to be planned, that doesn't go as well as you want. You come to a new, like I said, every site is unique. So even if you go into a deployment phase, you might end up with sites that are not happy with the solution, or really need something differently.
Yeah. Okay, good. So thank you, Moran, for answering these questions. Yes, okay. So this is the end of the webinar. First of all, thank you very much for attending, of course, to the audience. The slides will be distributed via PDF, so you will get an email with the slides. This webinar is also recorded, and we will send you a link in a couple of days, because first we have to process it a little bit. So then you will get a link with the recording, and please share it to your colleagues. Yeah. So please do. Perhaps also have a look at our website, so ipcos.com, to know more about our offering in the different domains and markets. Yeah, so digitalization is very broad. We have a quite large portfolio of services in this domain. So please have a look at our website, and if out of that you have questions, or you want to discuss how we IPCOS can help you in your digitalization initiatives, please do so. Contact us. There are a couple of buttons on the website where you say talk to an expert and so on. Please use these, and then immediately your messages will be forwarded to people like Moran, but we also have other experts depending on the topic you're interested in. So okay, so for now, many thanks. Have a nice day or nice evening, depending on where you are in the world. Moran, thank you again also for making this nice presentation. I got, by the way, here just a message, great presentation. So it's appreciated also by the audience. So for now, many thanks. Have a nice day, and talk to you and see you soon. Bye-bye.